Hey everybody, it's Joe Trippi, and welcome back to That Trippi Show with my co-host Alex Sashlow. This week, Alex is on the road, so our good friend Trygve Olson is here to help us make sense of what's going on. Alex asked last week if Trump was okay. Well, now the rest of the world is asking that too. Is this a distraction, or is there something that really matters out of all that? And then, of course, the victims of Jeffrey Epstein's sexual assaults tell the world it's not a hoax. And then Trump calls it a hoax. We'll get to all of that and make it clear, no matter what, that we have a lot of work to do. Trygve, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Joe. It's good to be here. I'm sort of like Alex with a smaller brain and a better taste in football teams.
Well, the better taste in football teams, that's definitely true. But the smaller brain, I don't know. So, hey, Trygve, what are you focused on this week, man?
So, well, as you know, I've been going down this AI rabbit hole with some stuff that we'll be announcing reasonably soon. So a lot of my week has been, and you know this, being the godfather of politics and the internet, a lot of my week has been, quite frankly, spent fighting with code mostly. But yeah, so that's what I've been focused on. That and the news, of course, which it just gets crazier and crazier, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sure does. I mean, last week we talked a little bit about Trump's health, Alex and I, and, obviously that debate is blowing up and, went kind of crazy over the weekend. And then the proof of life press conference yesterday, and so Alex is like, really, and is this a cover up or a distraction? And to me, it's both. It's both things. It's a distraction, but two, there's obviously a cover up going on. I don't know what your take on all this is.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a cover up going on. I think the other thing about it is and I mean, you and I have seen this around the world, right? Like Mugabe, Putin, like all these guys create the chaos, thrive on the chaos, say the chaos, the source of the chaos is a hoax. Right? Like, yeah, I mean, it's always the same, the thing I've always wondered about it is it a psychological makeup that these guys all have? I kind of think it is, it's autocratic personality disorder. So when he's confronted, everything's a hoax, or it's not true. Russia was a hoax. Epstein's a hoax. But I think Epstein, he's having a harder time getting out of this. For sure.
Oh, I definitely think that is definitely the case. I mean, I think you now have real victims coming out and talking about it and talking about, asking why, asking a lot of questions about why don't you just release all the files? And I don't know if you saw it. The press conference of the victims was pretty amazing in terms of, the talking through the trauma that they went through and what happened to them. I don't know how you could listen to those women who were girls when one was a 14-year-old when this all happened to her. And then of course, his reaction, it's a hoax, but I don't think anybody else who watched it or sees it will believe that. So I think this is, and of course, this is a moment that is, kind of shaking up his MAGA conspiracy base a little. So we'll see where that goes. But, it seems to me as much of a distraction as it is, the real question is what would happen. And this is something I really want you to get into, Trygve, because it's something I know you've given a lot of thought to. But what would happen if Trump dropped tomorrow? I mean, my view is, if he just, left voluntarily, I'm not wishing ill on him, but in terms of like his being able to breathe and live, but his comeuppance, if he did leave the scene, I don't see, the MAGA movement would still go on. Everything would still be this relentless march to end democracy and put an authoritarian government, would still move forward relentlessly, in my view. He admits that when he says things like, my base doesn't want to give farmers a pass on immigrants. In other words, even he now is in a lot of ways driven by that, the extremes in his base, the ones that say ICE isn't doing enough isn't inflicting enough harm on immigrants. And so, J.D. Vance, somebody would take the reins, and J.D. Vance is dangerous as hell. And so, Trygve, I wanted you to get what happens with a power transfer in an authoritarian structure like what Trump and MAGA have created. How do you see what would is there, in other words, I think there's a lot of people hoping, that Trump just disappears, that he has a massive health problem or something. And I'm one of those who thinks like, I don't think this goes away. If that happens, it could get worse. Yeah.
And I always think with those people, right, it's bad juju to be wishing ill health on anyone. It's not, that's karma, man. Well, you just don't do that, right?
It's also not a good strategy, hoping that, hoping that he disappears. It's bad strategy. Very bad.
It is. It's a terrible strategy. It's sort of like the strategy of, I wrote a book long ago for the Foreign Service and sort of the international community on autocrats. And one of the chapters was Lukashenko. No, it was insert dictator's name here sucks is not a message. And, it just isn't. I think, from an autocrat standpoint, the handoffs are never easy in the sense that typically as they become full-on autocrats, which all the people who say that, like here, we're on a bad course. And I think Trump would like to be that, but there's lots of resistance happening in lots of places. Our democracy is probably stronger than we think, but it's also more under threat than a lot of people are willing to admit. But usually handoffs are either really clean or really messy and they're usually clean if they hand it off to a kid or something like that, like, the Assad kind of model or the Kim Jong-un family kind of model. But in ones where you don't have that obvious transition, they get messy because the truth of the matter is, usually when you get to be like North Korea or Syria was, they've eliminated pretty much everybody else. So everybody knows who the successor is. I think if Trump were to leave the scene tomorrow, J.D. Vance would come in. I don't know that MAGA, it might splinter because there will be a lot of different forces that want their guy. Now, that being said, I think J.D. Vance in some ways is a more sophisticated threat. And some of the people that are behind and Vance is closest to, the Peter Thiels and some of the tech bros and stuff who really believe that we should just have sort of a oligopoly kleptocracy with some guy on top, they might be more empowered with J.D. Vance than they are with Donald Trump. Like Donald Trump is a marriage of convenience. J.D. Vance would be a marriage for love, I think, for those forces. Oh, yeah. No question about that. They would, I think Trump was just a vehicle. 100%. And J.D. Vance, J.D. Vance, they put him there on purpose. I mean, Peter Thiel did, and it was all about, I don't think it's all about a hope that Trump disappears and JD elevates to VP, although, they I'm sure they wouldn't mind it, but, more a plan to have him be the VP in waiting and run in 2028 or, with all their money and all their ability to influence the information system on X and across the networks, that they'd feel that, particularly because they think they're all powerful and can control people's minds, that they would be able to put him in, and then they'd have free reign to put the technocracy, the kleptocracy in place in a way where Trump doesn't want to share any of that money or power. Vance would gladly be a participant in their efforts. But I think the other thing, though, that you have to think about, Joe, sorry to interrupt, but I think Trump, within the, I think Don Jr. sees himself as the successor.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Like, so, and, I think Marco harbors ambitions. And I think it would get kind of dicey if Trump were to leave before the term's up. Then it's a little more difficult, right? Because it's sort of like George H.W. Bush ran as an incumbent. I'm trying to think of, Gerald Ford became president. It would, I don't know. I think there's a pretty good chance that the nominee would be J.D. Vance, but I do think that there would be other people out there competing. I think J.D. Vance probably slows the ascent towards autocracy in some ways, because there would be a lot of time wasted trying to consolidate power within the vertical power structure, rather than what Trump is trying to assimilate vertical power across all of government and whatnot. So
I'm going to make a bold prediction. I don't think Trump's going anywhere. I think,
no, I don't
and
think
that's
so
why
either.
I think, Alex thinks that this is like the death of Stalin, and Rick thinks it's weekend at Bernie's if Trump disappears, but or is in deep trouble on his health. But I think that like I said, hoping is that he goes off the screen is not a good strategy. We've got a lot of work to do, and I think reality is, there's definitely health issues. There's definitely a cover up, but I think it's mostly a distraction in terms of what we all need to do to push back against Trump and the authoritarian movement that he's built or part of.
Well, and I think I would say two things. One, jokingly, look at Keith Richards, right? Like, he's still somehow standing on a stage playing a guitar, and he looks like he's been dead for years. Brezhnev, same thing. But I think, all kidding aside, I just think, the idea that this is just about a battle with Trumpism, people need to recognize we saw what another facet of that battle in Beijing was Xi, Modi, and Putin standing on stage. This is a global fight that transcends humanity and transcends borders. We're just maybe in shock because we didn't expect it to happen here.
Well, no, I keep saying that look, and I think it was Dick Gephardt who on a Zoom call that pointed this out. Basically the default position of governance of humankind from the earliest days in the cave has always been, for thousands and thousands of years, the strong man, the dictator, the king. And democracy, we the people, being able to use our voice, elect our governor, we are the government, we the people, is actually an aberration. It's the experiment that's only been around for hundreds of years, not thousands, and so the default is always back to. That's why you saw like you said, Xi, Modi, and Putin. That's it's why democracy's in decline everywhere, has been. So it's and the reason that's the case is exactly what you just said, Trygve. It's because the autocrats know that democracy is their downfall. So they are working together at all points to kill democracy everywhere they can. And that's a real force that's been out there. And it's been, it's literally now a force within the Republican Party. Actually, it's taken over the entire Republican Party. It's now an autocratic, authoritarian movement with a lot of support from a lot of bad people out there in the world, which I keep saying we make the mistake of thinking, we'll get them at the next election. No, we have to create and build a pro-democracy movement to counter, and worldwide. It's got to be democracies and people in democracy, people who care about democracy, who want to keep it alive, need to to build a pro-democracy movement here in the United States and worldwide to counter this, because no single party, no press, can overcome just how they've been able to build the whether it's everything from Fox to X to, just the communication networks, the money that they've built up, the tech bros, and all the autocrats in the world aiding and abetting anything that hurts democracy anywhere, whether the UK, here in the States, Italy, anywhere. They're doing it. And that's why you see that movement growing worldwide, not just here. But I want to get to a couple listener questions that Alex pulled. There's two that he thought, gets to a point where he wanted your thoughts and mine. One's from Charlie. Can't Democrats find an opening with the constant covering up this administration is doing? First Epstein, and now the health thing. How can we turn it around? And then Sam sort of brings up the same thing. Fox News spent 2 years making fun of Biden's health and even dunked on him when he was diagnosed with cancer. How can we have a fair conversation here? My response to that is that kind of makes the whole point. There is no Democratic or pro-democracy Fox or X. The reason Epstein and is Trump dead are so important is because those are 2 times the propaganda machines, and Trump lost control of the attention power of the current information way people get information today. And so, wonder what you think of this. I think the reason people think JD will be easier to take on is because they don't see him or anyone else able to dominate, the attention, the economy, where attention is everything environment that media environment that they're in, like Trump does. But JD will have the propaganda machines, the tech bro money, and an entire authoritarian party still moving relentlessly to rig the vote in 2026. That's not going to stop. Because a lot of it is because they know if they lose in 2026, they could be in deep trouble. Some of them go to jail and stuff. So I don't know. What do you think about all this? There's
a piece of me, and you and I share this in common. Like 2026 is a long ways away, right? Yeah. Like November of 2026. There are going to be elections. They may be neither free nor fair, but there will be elections. Gerrymandering is about fairness of the elections. But in truth, the reason that you need a pro-democracy coalition is you just have to swamp them. Right? They're still going to have people go and vote. Now, I thought it was fascinating, and I want your take on this because it's kind of related to the question. Did you see where Donald Trump tweeted the other day that he wants all paper ballots?
Yeah, of course.
That is the go-to method for stealing elections around the world, right? Like when IFES and the organizations from the U.S. and abroad that would come in and help with elections, the first thing that they would try and do, if possible, is eliminate paper ballots and go to some other system, because that's the easiest way to cheat. I don't think that's surprising, and it's not realistic. You know how long it takes to count paper ballots in a major American city? It would take forever. So, it's pretty clear that that's what they're going to do. I haven't been losing a lot of sleep over it because the truth of the matter is what I understand from my work around the world, and I'd be interested if you feel the same way. They can gerrymander the seats. They can futz around with stuff. But the only way we're going to take this down is swamping them at a ballot box. Yeah. And it's going to mean overwhelmingly a broad coalition that says of really Democrats and independents, because most former Republicans are now independents. It's going to take, the pro-democracy side getting 55% of the national vote. And then they can gerrymander seats all they want. They're not going to win those seats.
No, that's why when I talk about the work we've got to do, because we have to build that pro-democracy big tent of Democrats and independents that swamp them in 2026. And what's amazing to me is that the same people in the party that were saying don't talk about democracy, no one cares about democracy, are suddenly, I don't know if it's seen in the last couple of days, but all of a sudden they're
Ben Rhodes. He's the ultimate with that. After Obama finally called it out, then he's changed his tune.
Yeah. That's, I mean, they're all changing.
They went 180.
Yeah, it's all, hey, democracy is really under threat. People have to wake up. Great. We've been just saying this for 2 years at least, but probably a lot longer, going back to 2016. Yeah. But I mean, I'm talking about where it became kind of like the controversy. Do you talk about it or not? We were talking about it when everybody was telling us to shut up. And now it's all everything that we said was going to happen is happening. But also what we said needs to happen is also happening. I mean, where the pro-democracy movement is growing, and I think I think like there's a new, the No Kings is coming back. There's going to be a rallies coming up. We really need to grow those. People need to visibly show that we're growing it by the millions, and that's what and we can't wait to November of 2026 to build that movement into what Trygve's talking about, where it really is. We've talked to our neighbors, our coworkers, our family members. We've grown the movement. We've raised the alarm, and they're participating and being active because I love getting retweeted, but a retweet is not activism. It's not. You got it. We have to take action visibly in the streets, peacefully, and push back against all of this.
100%. And everybody needs to think through and wake up every day, in places confronting what we're confronting. You need to wake up every day. You need to think to yourself, what do I have a unique skill set that I can bring to the battle? And how can I be helpful? And each of us is going to have our own ways that we can engage. And some of them will overlap and some of them will be unique to us. But it's all about undermining that vertical and calling out truth and really empowering others to be engaged. And then I think the other piece is, and it's what I've been working on, and I'll want to come back probably at the end of September and talk about what we're going to be putting out. But
look forward to that.
It is really about giving people the tools to sit at Thanksgiving dinner and have a conversation with Uncle Charlie and help lead. It's not about what you're saying. It's about how they're hearing it and knowing how to start engaging in honest conversations, because this battle isn't going to be won through tweets and big actions. It's going to be won around dinner tables with family and friends, or at a bar when you're out drinking with your buddies in Wisconsin who are concerned about what's happening, but they're also concerned about, maybe it's the woke left or whatever it is, and getting them to see the cognitive dissonance between how they live their lives and how they treat the immigrant who's in their church versus what they're advocating for politically.
Yeah. And one of the things that's always the case is that Trump, and MAGA, they get away with a lot, but they also, I think, the more Trump tries, like alligator Alcatraz, the more he kind of feeds the beast that wants the ice to be even tougher. He pushes away those independents. Like you talked about, Republicans who are becoming independents that are leaning more Democratic. And I'm wondering two things that, we've got two sort of things happening right now. The police state, this effort for him to put troops in Chicago, Baltimore. Now he's talking today about New Orleans, because I guess he figures he's got to try to do something in a red state. But I think that's raising the alarm. That's sort of helping raise the alarm. People are, they're starting to realize that, wait, that's not America. There's something really wrong here. Democracy really is at stake. What those guys have been saying, I should start thinking about. I wanted your take on that, on Pritzker and Newsom. Are they moving the needle at all in your view?
I think both of them are doing a good job of standing up. I wish they would talk more about states' rights and pointing out the hypocrisy and going to Republican groups or former Republican groups or more conservative parts of their states or maybe even some other states, and talking about, hey, we're the ones who are really defending states' rights here, right? Like they need to be making that case because it's ingrained on the right. I think that to the bigger question about the police state, you've met my daughter Ula, right?
Yeah.
She's now a junior, which is breaking my heart because Joe, you're a girl dad too. You're our girl dad, right? Like I'm literally counting down the days that she has left in the house, and I'm not even to senior year. Like it's just gotten me.
Oh no, man! The biggest hit was when I finally took my daughter Christine, when I had to take her to college and moved her into the dorm room, and I was sitting there, and it's 7:00 at night, some 7:30, and she turns to me and says, "Dad, you got to go." This is like, it's just like, you got to go. So I know what you're talking about, man. Yeah.
But so she's a huge sports fan, right? Like loves football, baseball, like and she got it from me with the Packers, right? But she likes basketball. It's her Lithuanian roots. So she wanted to go to the WNBA game with her friend, which the WNBA stadium's over in Anacostia. And I was like, okay, I'll drive you over there. I hadn't been in the district in ages. And so I'm driving down Constitution and there's National Guard on the mall. And she's like, look at this. This is crazy, Dad. We get over to Anacostia. There's no National Guard there.
Yeah,
and
that's where it
where's
needs,
the crime in DC? It's not. If he really was concerned about the crime problem and he really wanted to make favors with the people who live in Anacostia, that's where he'd have the National Guard. This is all cosplay. It's just cosplay.
The other thing I wish that that Gavin and Pritzker and others would talk about is what the Democrats, like Bill Clinton put 100,000 police, provided the money for departments to add 100,000 police to their forces. There may be people on the left who, raise hackles over that, but hey, we've done things that work. We're doing things. Crime's gone down 30% in the last few years. The money that was put into mental health and the programs into mental health and early intervention in high crime neighborhoods with young people, all these things have been working. And the president could do what Clinton did, provide money to hire well-trained community police officers who identify and know the community and work within it. That would be far better. And they'd be trained to handle crime in those kinds of neighborhoods in our cities. And instead, you send in people who've had no training at all, other than military training, which is, God bless them, they're serving us. That's not what they were trained to do. And it actually pushes the community and people in the community away out of fear and out of, hey, what the hell are these armored vehicles doing in my neighborhood if they show up in the neighborhoods? And so, no, this is all about, I think it's about trying to create a violent response in retaliation. In other words, you push and push and push, you put more troops out there, and some community somewhere, it blows up, it turns into a violent reaction, and then he's got the everything he needs to declare a national emergency, and really roll the police state even deeper. And I think that's what I think. The other thing that I think we've got to keep talking about peaceful demonstrations, not and to react. Just because he's crossing the line, do not react violently. I think that's what he wants.
That's what they all want. And I mean, it's a quantifiable fact that nonviolent resistance far more effective than violent resistance. I think the other thing in all of it, at the end of the day, and I was thinking about this actually as I was driving back, after I dropped them off. And I had said to him, you don't leave the stadium until, Katie's parents come to pick you up, right? Like, I don't want you walking or even around the neighborhood of the stadium. But when I was driving back, I'm going by and those National Guard guys are there. And it was the day before, it was right before school is starting. And I was thinking, those guys can't be happy. Like, they're sitting on the mall in DC. That's fun for a couple of days. And then you're missing dropping your kid off at school because you've been posted to, guard the mall. Like, what? Like, that's not, is that worth it? Like, that's nuts, right? Like, you're giving up dropping your kid off at school. You only get 12 shots at that. And I'm thinking, those guys can't be happy about it either. Somebody needs to be making the case to them. Is this a good use of your time? And they need to be going back to the red states where they came from and be like, yeah, it was fun being in DC, but I don't know what I was doing there. People need to be talking to them and encouraging them to be making the point. Why am I doing this? What is this for? This isn't like going and storming beaches at Normandy to save democracy around the world, right? Like, this is stupid.
Stupid is the governor of Mississippi sending National Guard to D.C. When Mississippi's got like 2-3 times the crime problem that D.C. has. So he's got National Guard in. He's all willing to call up the National Guard and send them to Donald Trump in D.C., but he hasn't ever called them to help fight crime in Mississippi, where they're actually
Jackson.
Where they actually could like maybe be close to home. I mean, none of this makes sense. It all points to one thing and one thing only: the relentless push for absolute power and using now our own military, our National Guard, to build the police state. It started with ICE. Now they have billions more dollars, thanks to what the Republicans passed in the budget, to build that part of the police state up within ICE. And now you're seeing the National Guard, and it's going to expanding into city after city. So I think that should, I hope, spark the next round of activating people and getting them to recognize the threat. And actually, one thing people can do, and it is easy as asking your friends to listen, to go read Trygve, pay attention to what's happening on Lincoln Square, so that at least they start to get the message. And you can introduce your friends and family to it that way. But I agree with Trygve. It's at the dinner table. It's actually explaining this to them. I hope some of the things we talk about on the show help you, give you some ways to think about talking to your family members or your coworkers when you're out for lunch. But we've got to grow people's awareness about how dangerous this is to the future of the country.
Yeah, and both immediate future and long term. And it kind of gets back to something. I think I was on a podcast that Reed Galen was doing. I said, it was long ago. He said, you've worked around the world in all these places without democracy. You don't want your girls growing up in an America without democracy. And I said to him, I don't want them to grow up in a world without American democracy and an America without democracy. But what I really don't want them is to see what the world looks like without American democracy.
Yeah.
And we're seeing more and more of that all the time. I mean, I was thinking about this a lot. I was standing probably 20 yards from President Bush after Lithuania got into NATO in the main square. And there were all these Lithuanians cheering and excited and waving American flags and waving NATO flags and waving Lithuanian flags. And then you compare that moment to January 6th and Donald Trump with Putin rolling out the red carpet in Alaska and how that's turned out. And then you see Xi and Modi and Putin and Beijing. It just is so ironic to me that the people that have bought into this horse shit about making America great again are watching the destruction of everything that's made America great. And quite frankly, I think a lot of them thought that Donald Trump would make their world a safer place, when in reality, a world run by Xi, Modi, and Putin, primarily Xi, is not a safer place. And Donald Trump is aiding that. And quite frankly, I mean, to the other question about Biden and health versus Trump and health, Yeah, I mean, the people around Biden who decided that they weren't going to admit what the American people knew 2 years prior, like they did not help the cause of pointing out Donald Trump's fallacies by not being honest. And
no, but you're right. Like when we were working in Ukraine, I mean, not Ukraine, excuse me. We both did that too. But I was thinking about Zimbabwe,
right,
where the U.S., we hardly lifted a finger. I mean, as a government during that fight, but China was on the other side with Mugabe, like with everything, weapons, the whole thing, funding, holding his paying, getting money to pay his troops, all that stuff. And so, like, when you take us totally out of that equation, the way Trump has, they can just run rampage now. I mean, you've seen it, I've seen it, and it's amazing when you go in and work in these places. The sacrifice, I mean, in Zimbabwe, Mugabe, they were literally hacking off limbs of the people who were on the pro-democracy side, in villages. So, and China was all part of that, funding it and helping it happen. Anyway, so I just think you raise a point. If you start to actually, that was with quote, a kind of normal America that put pressure on, but wasn't playing by the same rules China was, put it that way.
Right.
We were still doing Marquis of Queensberry rules, but Marquis of Queensberry. But I think if you now take us totally out of that, the way Trump has, that world is going to be a very different place, because there'll be a lot of democracies around the world that will not survive the onslaught. The only thing that's kept Putin from at bay in Ukraine, despite all the destruction, all the horror that he's waged on the place, was because we in the West were there. Otherwise, he would have rolled through the whole place by now. And then it's not going to stop. So I just want to tell people that, like, I agree with what Trygve said at the top, that the democracy, our institutions are, and I believe the people of America are a lot stronger than even we, think right now, and will be able to build the pro-democracy movement that succeeds and pushes back against us and wins. But 2026 is just the beginning of that fight. We need to win it. We will. We've got a lot of the dynamics, the favorability of Trump and what he's doing, is going down. His approval ratings are going down. Republicans are reacting to it. That's why they did the Texas power grab for seats, because they were worried that they couldn't survive a fair election in 2026. So we've got a lot of work to do. But Trygve, before we go, I wanted to ask you, where can people find you? Where can they find more information, or where you write things? And, where's the best way for people to learn about you?
The best way for them to learn about what I write about, I write on Substack, at a Substack called Searching for Hope. I've been a little remiss the last few weeks. I was traveling, and then I got back and work has swamped me, but it's always free. It will always be free. It's my lessons that I've learned around the world from fighting for democracy. Talk a little bit about what I experienced with stillbirth from a father's perspective. My daughter would have been 19. It kind of shaped, her name would have meant hope in Lithuanian, or means hope in Lithuanian. And I write about things like, I was thinking as you were saying that point about us being stronger, I was thinking about something that I wrote a little bit about, and I was thinking about it on the last few days. As you know, I grew up in a relatively small town just outside of Minneapolis, St. Paul in Wisconsin, River Falls, Wisconsin. And I never knew this until recently, Joe, Memorial Day. So the reserve postman at my hometown was a guy named Pahachik. And I knew he had served in World War II. He was a farmer, and then he would deliver the mail when our regular mailman was gone. Oh, he was a really nice guy. You'd sit and talk to him. And I was doing some research because I was going to write on Memorial Day about some of the heroes that I'd grown up around. And I was doing some research online, and I came across Pahachik. I can't remember his first name. It turns out he was one of the boys of Point du Hoc. And in fact, it had his whole story about how at 18 years of age, he scaled the walls at Point du Hoc. He was with 200 other guys. 28 of them made it. And here's a guy, no one knew that. True hero of America. All of us have that. And then he went back and farmed and delivered the mail. And no one never talked about it. All of us have that within us. We're Americans, for God's sakes, right? Like, we just need to believe and understand that we can each find little things to do that cumulatively make a huge, huge difference. So that's the kind of things I write about at Searching for Hope. If you're just looking for stuff that feeds the outrage machine, you're not going to get it from me, nor are you probably going to get it from Joe. But if you're looking for some stuff of substance and 3 things you can do every day, that's where you'll find it.
Great. Thanks, Trig. Thanks for coming on. And thanks, everyone, for listening to That Trippi Show. Make sure you join us. It says SEZ.US. It's a civil social network for real human beings that's pro-democracy. And we're any help in building it, telling your friends to join. We are growing. Both, Gavin Newsom, Adam Kinzinger, Hillary Clinton are all posting there pretty regularly now, and it's growing. I hope you'll check it out. This podcast will always be free and is part of Lincoln Square, so check out the latest at lincolnsquare.media. Also, if you're listening to this episode on YouTube, please like and subscribe to get alerts when we post the next episode. You can always send us a question to thattrippishow@gmail.com or leave us a question and a review on iTunes. Alex will be with us next week. See you then.